Welcome back. Governor Kathy Hochul announced New York State commits $2.4 million in funding to help bring more traditionally underrepresented students to the physician workforce. Managed by the Associated Medical School of New York, President, CEO of the organization, Jo Wiederhorn, joins me to discuss this effort. Jo, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, this is really exciting and amazing news. Can you first just tell us a little bit more about the Associated Medical School of New York?
Sure. Well, we represent New York State's 17 medical schools. Just as a point of information, New York has more medical schools than any other state in the country, and we train more medical students than any other state in the country. The other really important thing that relates to this is that approximately 20% of the students within all four levels of medical school are underrepresented in medicine students, and this is higher than the national average, quite a bit higher than the national average, and it is really due a lot to the programs that have been supported by the government, by the state. So we're very pleased that we're able to increase them even more.
Now, as I mentioned, you're going to be seeing $2.4 million in funding towards supporting, Black and Latino physicians, as well as many other physicians of color. Can you just talk a little bit more about the importance of this effort?
Sure. There have been many studies that have been done that show that there are better health outcomes when the race ethnicity of the physician is in concordance with the race and ethnicity of the patient. And that's because patients are much more willing to speak to physicians who are similar to themselves. They're much more willing to follow treatment options. And so the more underrepresented physicians that we can get, the more underrepresented physicians who match the population of the state, the better the health outcomes are going to be for the state. And this is really important in this day and age.
Now, this funding will support diversity programs for Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, or Native American students. Could you just talk a little bit more in depth about these programs?
Sure. Right now, with the additional funding, we will be able to reach over 800 students within New York State. We do this through a series of programs that start when students are in high school and continue right on to the time when they can get into medical school, to help them get into medical school. So our largest programs are 5 post-baccalaureate programs. These programs take students who have applied to medical school and are interested in going into medical school, but haven't quite made the MCAT scores, the test to get into medical school, haven't quite made the MCAT scores, or they don't have the GPAs, or maybe they don't have some of the soft skills that are needed for medicine. And the medical school will send them to one of our post-bac programs. And if the student successfully completes the program, they don't have to apply to medical school again. They are automatically accepted into the medical school. Our first program was started in 1991, and there are now over 700 practicing physicians, and these are students who otherwise hadn't gotten into medical school.
Wow, that's truly amazing. I'm so happy you shared that. Now, as you mentioned, it is going to be helping 800 students or over 800 students, which is like a
Yeah.
huge accomplishment. Can you just talk a little bit more about how this will directly impact those students? And I understand that this funding is also going to kind of help with scholarships. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So first, the 800 students. Our biggest group of students are at the CUNY School of Medicine. The CUNY School of Medicine is a BSMD program. Students enter that school directly from high school. So needless to say, it's quite a shock going directly from high school into medical school. And so there we support an academic learning center. And that way, students at all levels of medical school can come and get tutoring, peer-to-peer counseling. They can get an idea of how they study, what the best way to study is, to help them, because it's not only getting into medical school, it's also being able to succeed while you're in medical school. So that's the vast number of our programs. We also provide programs for mentorship, where funding for mentorship programs, where there are students in medical school who get paired with mentors. Another vital aspect of retaining students in medical school. It's also a vital aspect of getting students into medical school, so students can see that there are physicians out there who've been through experiences similar to theirs, who have made it through those experiences and are succeeding. So they become role models for students. And then we also have MCAT training. A lot of the funds go for MCAT training, so students are prepared to take these tests. They're very rigorous tests. And unfortunately, even though a number of schools are moving away from using MCATs as a means to determine who's going to enter medical school, 90% of the schools still use them. And they're important because some of our medical schools will get 4,000 applications for 150 slots. So you have to really be able to, shine through the other 3,950 applications.
Right. I'm sure it is like really competitive field. I also want to bring up the fact that according to the Manhattan Times News, only 12% of physicians in New York are Black or Hispanic. Could you quickly, for those who are probably just not familiar or don't understand, could you just explain why we see that disparity?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that until, about 15 years ago, there wasn't really a large effort of trying to get underrepresented students into medical school. Everybody understood it was important, but over the last 15 or 20 years now, schools have been making much more of an effort. They're doing much more outreach. They're providing supports while the students are in medical school. So, practicing physicians, a majority of them finished longer ago than 15 years ago, which is part of the reason for the disparities.
Now, communities of color in New York have faced disparities in their access to healthcare and continue to endure poorer health outcomes. Could the lack of physicians of color contribute to this? And even if it's not the biggest thing, does it contribute at all?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It goes back to what I had initially said, which was patients who are underrepresented, and they feel more comfortable if they're talking to physicians who look like them, physicians who've had similar experiences, physicians who oftentimes will speak the same language. That's a huge issue. If you don't have, if you have to have an interpreter, if you have to have your child or your grandchild in the room with you, with the physician, to explain what's going on. People are not that comfortable just talking about their ailments through their children, or to their doctors. So when that concurrence occurs, health outcomes are so much better.
That's amazing to hear. And I can imagine how that would work. If you're going to your doctor and they say you have to stop eating food, but maybe that's a cultural food. If it's somebody who, can relate to you, they can probably give you similar alternatives. So hearing
Exactly.
that, I can definitely see that being the truth. Now, our society is also currently having discussions on racial bias or medical racism within the healthcare system. And I feel like this effort puts the focus on the health professionals. Do you think this could help with eliminating, those issues that we're seeing in the healthcare system?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think, first of all, you get people who are different from you, no matter what field you're in. And your knowledge of people and your knowledge of their culture, of how they think, what's important within their cultures expands. And once knowledge expands, racism and cultural biases decrease. So I think that is an extremely important part of what's happening within medical education now. the expansion of the students, of the backgrounds of the students who are in medical school. I think that will really help with the racism and the structural racism that is occurring within healthcare. But let's remember, this has been going on for years and years and years, and we are just at the beginning of trying to combat this problem. So it's not going to go away overnight, but it will improve. The more underrepresented students we get, the more underrepresented physicians we have. The lesser the decrease will occur in terms of structural racism.
Now, can you just talk a little bit about the challenges Black and Hispanic students face in health education? Because you mentioned that, of course, getting into medical school is important, but staying and succeeding is also just as important. So, can you talk about that?
Sure. That's why things such as mentorship programs, there are societies within medical school and upon graduation from medical school, which help support underrepresented students. And these things are really, they provide a sense of, I can make this, I can do this, and they also provide a network of people so that as they go through medical school, as they go through their residency programs, they have people to call on. They have people who can be supportive of them. And this is what it really takes once you're in medical school. Medical schools provide a lot of tutoring and a lot of support for all their students, because once you're in medical school, they don't want you to fail. I mean, clearly they want you to get through. But there is a difference in terms of having that same kind of support from people who are similar to you or from the same background as you, and you can relate to on a different level than somebody who has totally different experiences.
Can you talk about the graduate and undergraduate programs at AMSNY?
Well, we don't have graduate programs or undergraduate programs. What we do is we provide funds to the medical schools and let the medical schools run the actual programs. But what we do is we support programs throughout the educational continuum. So we have programs at colleges that are programs that will help, for instance, the MCAT prep programs or mentoring programs. We've actually been supporting some programs at Staten Island University Hospital or at Mount Sinai Hospital, where students get to go in and do research, because research is a very important part of medical education. So we're supporting them throughout. We don't necessarily have programs ourselves. But I can tell you about one program that we're starting, which I'm very excited about, if you've got another minute. The program, we call it MAP to Success. It is medical application preparation to success, MAP to Success. And in this program, it's a new program, but in this program, what happens is we connect undergraduate colleges that have strong athletic programs to medical schools that have one of our post-baccalaureate programs. And because there is a dearth of Black men in medical school, we're targeting Black men athletes when they're juniors and seniors in undergraduate school.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. We are at the end of our show. I know, I'm so sorry, but we definitely will put the link below so people can learn more about these programs and about your organization. But I want to say, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And thank you for having me. Thanks. Very much.
That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in. From our Bronxnet family to yours, we are wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.